Friends, hello everybody, let's start on time. Today we have Petro Chornomorets and a very interesting topic. Petro is the co-author of the future. He's a PhD in biology, and today we'll be talking about a very interesting topic, cooperation and teamwork in the children team. Well, it's about side effects of the teamwork. So let's start. A few videos to start with. You can see? Can you see what's happening? This is the fights and fireworks. First and foremost, who, in at least one of the videos, when you actually relive the process, just raise your hands. Okay, good. What is, according to your feelings, what is common in all the 5 videos? This is all teamwork. What is common? These are all aspects of teamwork. But in terms of your feelings, one story when we were chasing the geese, right? And the different story where we're shooting each other from fireworks. Something is common. What? Feelings. What kind of feelings? I feel that I'm bigger than I am, and I have a feeling of something big, something drives and something strong. So it's there in all of the cases. The teamwork can have a lot of aspects. We will need this. Okay, here we are. So the teamwork has many aspects. I am asking you to take just one, and which is the work of Catecholamine system. So now we will have a bunch of us. Dopamine, everybody heard it, right? This is probably neuromediator. How does it work? Somewhere here there is a neuron. Okay, let's just Somewhere here there is a neuron, there is a nerve, and it ends with this, where the neuron connects with the other neuron. There is an electric impulse everywhere, and in synapse, for instance, insects, they can transfer from one cell to another. Humans have a chemical synapse, and there is certain substance, adrenaline is here, but there can be a lot of options. So in a synapse, there is a defunding, and it's merged with the postsynaptic membrane, and this is the end of the next cell, and then the cell gets a signal and further. So that's how it's happening. So our catecholamines, they work as neuromediators. So and with that, all of them are connected. Catecholamine systems are connected with the feeling of moving ahead. It can have different emphasis at first. So if dopamine dominates, then it's an inspiration and drive. This is what's happening during teamwork. If noradrenaline, it's anger and aggression, and if adrenaline, it's probably fear. Nevertheless, this is the set of catecholamine. We love it, we want it. This is the feeling that I'm alive. It appears first and foremost under the impact of catecholamine. Now, I did it before. Листайте.
Я хочу выйти из презентации. В прошлый раз у меня это получалось, а сейчас...
Попробуйте там, где Windows значок в левом нижнем. Самый низ.
Вот этот?
О, окей.
Да.
So,
Так вот, по поводу катехоламинов, собственно, это наш...
regarding catecholamine, this is the central topic now. There are very many interesting details.
Наверное, сначала видосик, а потом слайд.
I'll show the video and then slide.
Ну, давайте сразу так. Скорее всего, какой из катехоламинов доминирует у девочки сейчас?
What catecholamine is dominating in this girl now?
Норадреналин, она злая.
Noradrenaline. She's angry.
Скорее всего, дофамин, да. То есть
Dopamin.
она очень хочет достичь
She really
результата.
wants
То есть
to achieve
понятно,
this
что,
result.
скорее всего, их много всех.
There are many of those.
Убегать это адреналин, догонять это норадреналин.
So run away is adrenaline.
Одно дело агрессивно догонять.
One is aggressive catching and the other is non-aggressive catch. So there is this
А что у нее сейчас?
what's happening now?
Это мальчик?
This is a boy.
Хорошо.
Fine, this is a boy,
То
right?
есть по легенде известно, да?
I thought it was a girl, now it turns out that it's a boy.
Ну ладно, окей.
Okay,
Оставим этот вопрос
doesn't matter.
отдельно.
Let's leave
Короче,
this.
что у этого человека
What
сейчас
this
доминирует?
human being, what is dominating in him or her?
Есть радость. Радость
There
связана
is a
с
joy.
еще одним нейромедиатором, который называется серотонин.
It's called, it's connected with the serotonin, and this is not just a joy. Joy is, oh, I'm just
И,
happy.
скорее всего, это что?
And what else?
Эйфория — это
Euphoria,
то, что серотонин,
it's still serotonin, and
просто прикольно.
under
Это может
serotonin
быть
was
какое-то
just,
бешенство. Ну, для серотонина,
for serotonin, I will probably do
одна
that.
из моих любимых
This is one of my favorite topics. For instance, what's happening under serotonin when there is not a little bit, we're just, when serotonin is, the world is wonderful. For instance, I am sitting on the table and this is great that I have this foundation. I can see people and I'm comfortable with you, I'm cool with you, nice air, not cool, not hot. So serotonin is fine. There's enough light. Marker, right? Red marker. It's a great marker because you can write something and then you can. So people created marker. You can. And then there is a board, there can be bad red, and then there is a wonderful, and then the covers, and then it's you don't lose the lid, right? This is wonderful. They say red and green are not, okay, strawberries, with the sea and then the rain. You put your bare feet in there and strawberries and sea. Can you hear? You can dance. This is serotonin. Obviously, the girl doesn't have a different reaction. Girl or a boy, it doesn't matter. Endorphin is the physical pleasure. Most importantly, let's not waste our time. Most important is that she's also angry. This is the angry joy, where the situation, like we have serotonin as a pure joy, and on the other hand we have noradrenaline. Why? Because tyrosine, then the dopamine is synthesized from that, and then all of a sudden from dopamine there is noradrenaline, and from noradrenaline in one step adrenaline. What does it mean in fact? It means that the person is in the situation of a strong drive, it has a lot of dopamine, it will be partially aggressive. This is the biochemistry like that. So many conclusions are coming from this. It's clear why sports fans, after the win of their team, they beat up their opponents more than after a loss. After the win, they actually beat up the opponents and crash the cities. So when we use the teamwork, when we use a strong motivation, more or less, more of the people who are engaged, they will have a lot of level of aggression. There's a lot of outcomes here. Number one, we have to take into consideration this high level of aggression and know how to compensate it. And in some cases, we should avoid this extra motivation. So the more motivation and engagement, the better it is. But it's actually a problematic story because dopamine is motivation and it's transformed into noradrenaline. The reverse process is also happening. That's why we have fun when we're scared and when we're angry. This is the two-way story, Second important moment regarding catecholamine. So I'm taking a cup. I'm closing the door of the cupboard. I put in water. So, dear friends, everything is ready. Water, boiled oil, and I hope that I'm not going to suffer here. Counting on 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, there are swear, cursing. What is this video all about?
Да, дальше абсолютно
And then there is a healthy reaction.
На такую большую аудиторию.
For such a large audience, I'm not risking. For a small one, I usually.
Да, к чему это видео?
What is this video all about? That usually
Все системы
all the systems
регулируются по
are
механизму
regulated according to the negative reverse connection. So, for instance, if we're talking about hunger,
у нас
and
потихонечку падает уровень глюкозы в крови.
So glucose blood level is dropping and hunger is growing. At some point we eat, glucose goes up, hunger goes down, and then it goes back. Hunger goes up, we eat, hunger goes down. It's a balanced system. There's a different explanation for this. For example, we have a fire and there's a pot of water on top of the fire. So the fire is growing, the water boils more, the water boils over and the fire gets extinguished somewhat, and then the process repeats. This is a self-regulating, reversed reaction system. If we put the pot of oil on top of the fire, then we will get an explosion. Very few systems in our body are regulated on the positive reverse connection. Immune system works in the following way. If we have some bacteria or virus in our tissues, macrophagy are noticing it, and they start secreting mediators of inflammation. So there's more macrophagy, more mediators of inflammation. Liver notices that, starts emitting C-reactive protein, and then everybody notices, and on one bacteria we can get plus 39 degrees temperature. Fever. Catecholamines are regulated on the positive feedback loop. Why catecholamines are regulated on positive feedback? Your ideas? Well, I would say that this is a reverse. So basically, if we have an evolutionary adopted mechanism that catecholamines are emitted, are secreted on the positive feedback loop, and we can either successfully run away or achieve something, this is all a consequence. But why is it a positive feedback loop anyway? What's the reason? Once again, since we like this state, we want to keep it, but this is not about physiology. We want to create it additionally. What's the reason? Why is it following the positive feedback loop? Actually, I've given you all of the positive information. You just have to make analogies. Well, this can be serotonin, and they will have negative feedback loop. This synapse demonstrates negative feedback loop, even though it's catecholamines. So these are all receptors, and beta receptors are alerting. Noradrenaline gets secreted here, and then they agitate the other cells. Alpha receptors are impeding, and this is how most of the synapses are reacting. For most catecholamines, this is beta receptor here, which increases itself. Why is it so? Here's an analogy. I gave you an analogy of immune system, which also works on the positive feedback loop. What's the similarity here? Yeah, the stimulus is there still. For serotonin, when the C is out there, it's also stimulus. Once again, when I see a strawberry patch, it's still a stimulus, but I can be happy about it, but I can be happy about it. With catecholamine, I will need some time until I have time to stop, until I need to stop. So why is this happening evolutionarily? This is a consequence. Why did it start? Yeah, because catecholamine system is a protective reaction. All of the reactions that require positive feedback are reactions where you need to react with maximum power to a small signal. And catecholamine systems are protective systems. All of that is related to stress. Yes, dopamine is the hormone of happiness, but it's not super happy itself. With dopamine, just a little bit more and it's gonna get better, but it's not getting better until serotonin kicks in. So these are all stress hormones, and clearly they are secreted on the positive feedback loop because we need a powerful reaction. But this gives us a different problem with catecholamines, with teamwork, which is one of the key options of catecholamines, because in teamwork we are basically driving ourselves to a state of frenzy, to a manic state. Those of you who watched the Wave experiment, the movie called The Wave, about a teacher who created an analogy of a Nazi cell at school. And this is the mechanism. If we take dopamine synapse, on postsynaptic membrane, there's agitation, and then the signal moves on. But this dopamine should not stay in the synaptic gap, synaptic cleft. And then the reuptake transporter picks it up, and it either secretes back. If it's cocaine, cocaine blocks our reverse reuptake mechanism. It's done through the catecholamine, and then the person becomes like that. It blocks this. But if a person gets some kind of agitating signals, particularly if it's teamwork, particularly if there's some sort of driving force and goal, which is very worthy, we get a person who is on the same kinds of has the same kind of dependence as a cocainist. So we really are looking for catecholamines, and on the other hand, we have positive feedback loop, and we have a directive link between this and aggression. So we cannot do without catecholamines, and this is a very sad life without them, and we want to get agitated, but if it's too much of them, then we don't feel very well. Doesn't the number of receptors go down with excess of those substances? Well, for the negative reuptake, yes, that's how it happens. With catecholamines, there is some adjustment happening, but physical adjustment to cocaine or dopamine is much slower than to most other drugs. Well, heroin is fast. Even ecstasy, basically, the physical adjustment is going to be faster because it works in a slightly different way. Yes, adjustment happens, but very slowly. There's a different story there. I was expecting an hour of time, so I didn't include it here. And there are with catecholamines, there are sustainable zones of agitation in the brain. So even if they're used to it, they still require more and more of it. With catecholamines, we request more and more of them. And sometimes the drive isn't there anymore, but the zones are already agitating. Can we move on? Okay. So what do we do? We're familiar with serotonin. Let's do another video. More serotonin.
надоело? Никому. А, есть люди, да? Это потому что на дофамине сидит. Останавливаемся. Смотрим дальше. Вот, ну пока хватит.
Okay, that's enough for now. We'll keep watching it later.
Да, вот сейчас я думаю, что вы прочувствовали, да?
So now you can sense a different state. Before that, we were rushing forward, and I was rushing forward, and I think you were following me. But now it's sort of breathe out, calmness. Serotonin with dopamine are mutually contradictory. They're impeding each other. There's epiphysis, which is also the third eye, and it is responsible for the regulation of circadian rhythms. It is responsible for the regulation of sleep. And serotonin with dopamine are contradicting within it, and they're impeding each other's effects. So when serotonin goes up, it is reducing catecholamine systems. When dopamine goes up, it impedes the work of catecholamine systems. If we take this whole story with catecholamine, this means that right now these things aren't very good. In some cases, I'll be either angry or fearful. In some cases, I expect that, it's a little bit more and it's going to be good. And under this effect, you have to, run ahead and you have to do this. With serotonin, there's nowhere to rush. We've achieved everything. We're just swimming at leisure. So they are impeding each other. There's a different aspect of interaction between serotonin system and catecholamine system. If serotonin system has been agitated little for a long time, then the brain thinks it is a generally depressive or generally alert state. And when we're uncomfortable for a long time, the catecholamine response goes down. So high level of catecholamines in the long run, serotonin gives us the chance to run forward. But there's a side effect to it. Even though sometimes we say that serotonin helps us sort of break down and be in the state of this whale, a swimming whale, sometimes high level of serotonin will cause manic reaction. It will provoke additional dopamine emission. So if you take cocaine and ecstasy at the same time, it's going to be even rougher. So serotonin is a very ambiguous way to break down the system, to impede the system. A more reliable way is endorphins and oxytocin. Endorphins are probably most well known as pain mediators. Every time we're hurt, we emit endorphins and it's less painful. Massage, sex, and other sources of physical pleasure are all about endorphins. If we're running for a long time or if we're lifting weights and then we finish the training, that's compensatory emission of endorphins. So I cannot show you the video, because otherwise you will have to touch each other and everything in order to reach the effect. And the high level of endorphins also helps us stop running. Sit down and relax. This is how massage works. Craniosacral therapy is also working on towards that effect. They help us reduce all this rush from our body. Oxytocin is also very interesting because in its peak concentrations, it is responsible for childbirth in women, and the very basic levels, every person needs it, both men and women, and it's responsible for the state of calmness and protectedness and trust and reliance. So if we can provoke the emission of oxytocin in a human being, people start feeling calmer, and catecholamine turbine also gets slower. Gamma-amino fatty acid, GABA acid, it's a bit harder. It's hard to generate its emission in the body, but the long-term meditative practices help us turn on the agitation. Mindfulness techniques. What do I mean by that? I don't just mean meditation, which is usually stands behind mindfulness, but I mean here the ability of a person to knowingly apply all these mechanisms. I've practiced the situation when I had a real drive and I couldn't fall asleep. I fell asleep in the morning, then I focused that if I had a bit of joy, if I meditated, it also works. So my personal experience and regular reflection on how things work and how things don't work give me mindfulness of understanding. When I try it many times and I knowingly am able to apply those mechanisms. What's happening with time? Just that I have a feeling that I've rushed through it. 25 minutes. Okay, I was in too much of a rush. And then we will be watching whale for the rest of the time. So, what happens? What can we do with it? An important point is that when we are in a state of powerful activation of catecholamine chains, we cannot just break them down. We cannot just impede them. We will get the story with their mutual transformation, and we will either get aggressive or fearful, and if we are agitating the kids with some kind of game, telling them to sit and meditate, it's just going to be worse for them. And it's natural because that's how physiology works. Second point. We need catecholamine systems to get activated. This is basically what we're living for drive, for movement, for progress. And if a person doesn't have any drive in life, another system kicks in, which is called Glutamate System. I'm gonna overload you with all kinds of terms and systems now. No, I want to draw. There we go. There's a glutamate system. So what is glutamate? Glutamate is the same kind of glutamate which is added into sausages. Who visited the other lecture yesterday? Yeah, it's added into sausages because it gives the meat taste. But then it also works in our CNS. Bees are a good example to illustrate how it works. Bees are different. We may think they're all the same, but basically 20% are reconnaissance bees and 80% are worker bees who are flying around collecting pollen. The 80% know where to go. They go, they collect, they bring it back, and they're boring. The 20% of reconnaissance bees are bored. They don't want to just fly back and forth. So So they're flying anywhere. And basically, most of the time they don't find anything good, but most of the time they find something like water or pollen or whatnot. And then the reconnaissance bee dances a dance, and worker bees start flying into the place where the reconnaissance bee told them. And reconnaissance bee is different from worker bees with glutamate system. If we give normal worker bees some glutamate water, they start doing reconnaissance as well. Then glutamate goes out of their bodies and they become normal worker bees. I'm not sure humans will have the same effect on glutamate, but possibly sausages will increase your interest in life.
So if you eat too much Chinese food,
Есть такое.
yes,
Значит, я об этом не знал.
I didn't know about it, so
Окей, да, спасибо. Значит, такой эффект тоже есть.
there is this effect as well. So what is glutamate
Глутамат это состояние,
giving us? This is the condition where, well, I don't know what I want, but I want something. That's what it is.
Если его очень много, то
If
это
there is too much of it,
состояние
then there is a
паники.
condition of panic and worry.
И получается,
And
возвращаемся, да, к
then we're
удовлетворенной потребности в
coming back
командной
to
работе.
unsatisfied need
Если
on
человек
teamwork.
получает
So if the person is getting not enough activation of the catecholamine systems, then there will be.
Поэтому первое, что нам нужно делать, это
So first thing that we have to do is have to create a context where people can actually work with each other quite actively. So there is an activation of catecholamine systems. And secondly, if you come to a certain high level of activation, you need a context where you can drop down the affection and affect that. And the next is what we are. Let's do it this way.
то, о чем мы уже дальше говорили. То есть
What we spoke already
надо
about.
включать
We
максимально
have to turn on the serotonin and endorphin and
упражнения. Это
tactile exercise. It's about endorphins.
я бы сказал, что разговорные штуки, да, когда мы в маленьком
Talking,
кругу
if we in a narrow circle, when we're talking about intimate things, it's about oxytocin. Text depends on what we write. It probably makes sense to write about something personal, and then there is this feeling of safety and security, and theater and meditation, everything can be activated. So if meditation works well, then it activates oil acid and all the braking systems. So
осознанность, о которой я говорил,
consciousness can be achieved only through reflection. People can have a lot of life experience at 50, continue not to understand what's going on. Why? Because they're not reflecting about their experience. The person can be capable at 5 or 6, can be aware of what are his feelings. If we talk about with a 3-year-old, what do you feel now? Why is it appearing? Why is it in your body? By 5 to 6 years old, a person can actually reflect about their conditions and deal with it. You understand that it's still 6-year-old with all the limitations, but nevertheless, they can work with the effects much better than the 50-year-old who's not reflecting. Meditation and thank you. I'm shocked that it. Do we have any questions? If there is a non-desire to work in the team, then we have to deal with the specific cases, because it could be biology and specific the brain work, and more often it's some traumatic experience. People. So biologically, people and children are for teamwork, yes, except for some specific situations, yes. If, for instance, if a child has an autistic spectrum and some strong embodiment, they can feel unsafe with people, then they wouldn't work. But if we're talking about autistic people, when we're talking about teamwork, there is an interesting thing there. It's about feeling big, drive, and this is catecholamine systems. And on the other hand, it's activation of oxytocin systems. And for autistic person, oxytocin is really needed. Usually, people with autism, children with autism, if oxytocin level is low, so if you initiate it, then they start to behave almost as healthy people. So oxytocin somehow is connected in tactile contact, so they actually help to come out of autism. If a child has a cat, it's a great circumstance, restoration therapy, and I can actually think that there are people that it's too difficult for them to work in the teams. You said that when the children's team is overly excited, you can't say just calm down. It's not. So what is the breach from the overexcitement to the techniques that you've offered? Talks, text, mediation. Most importantly, it is go through intervene through some physical processes. You can run, you can fight. Both teacher, realistically, any physical exercise activities, if the excitement is over, it's like safe fights, right? If there is aggression. If there is no aggression, just running and come to the very far distant point. So physical activity. I don't know whether this example would be interesting right away. So we are regularly monitoring it and watching it. First of all, we're working with teenagers. I used to work with the small kids. It worked there as well, but with the teenagers, for instance, if we understand that if they're overexcited and we have an activity that envisages calming down, then we go far. We go far somewhere in. And if we went to a relatively high hill, then they already calmed down by that moment. The teenagers, like 12-year-old, 13-year-olds, they usually fight. They have pillows and they fight with those pillows. And usually they fight for 15 minutes and then they're coming out of that room and they say, okay, I'm calm now. So you just have to develop, depending on the group, you have to develop a stop word, and that's it. From age 14, they don't want to drive. You spoke about physical activities. Can you use physical activities as sanctions and punishment? How does it work in our case? Toma, you want to say? No? I thought you activated on that. There are our guys are here, so. How does it work? There are a few key ideas. The sanction is undesirable, so that it's not connected to the breach. The sanction should be a direct and natural result of a breach. So as a result of sanction, the breach, so like if there was damage done, the damage has to be undone. So if somebody is too loud, what is the connection between being too loud and push-ups? And in many cases, sanctions, where we use them, it makes no sense. Kids under 3, makes no sense to teach them not to touch the plug. You can actually train them, and they give them children until 3. They don't understand. I am not allowed. They don't understand. Their brains are not mature enough. Even at 3, they don't understand yet. So in majority of cases, when we're trying to use sanctions, we're trying to use them so that the person never does it. And any sanction becomes not a way to achieve result, but rather to incur pain, and it's not okay at all. So you have to really look carefully at this. In our case, it works in such a way, in terms of rules of the game. All the rules are done in such a way, and the majority of solutions are offered by the pupils. So if there are 16 people in the class, there is a general vote. Adults have 3 votes. Those 3 votes that are participating in the reflection, the rest of the 16 votes are children's votes. If they decide to use something, we use it. So then I was late. I was asked to do push-ups, and they were not comfortable. So, and I say, to physical, so like, you're bad, that's why you have to push up, and you just say, okay, you don't feel good, let's run. Yeah. Any more questions? That's it. Thank you very much.